Hello and welcome to the Building an Indie Business podcast with Supreme Rum Ham. I'm your host, Alex. Today, I wanted to discuss the podcast and what you'll be hearing when you're listening to it. My goal is to educate people through hearing about my experience building the podcast. Or not the podcast, the website. Building the website. Because my goal is to build a website, and the podcast is a form, my medium of educating people. This podcast will be unedited. Actually, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna set up a Patreon page, and if you guys don't like the fact that the podcast is unedited, you can send me money, and I will use that money to pay someone to edit the podcast. Okay. The next thing I want to do on this podcast is I want to walk people through how I did something on my website or why I did something. An example would be how I added dark mode and light mode to my website, or how I use CSS Grid to organize the layout, stuff like that. I'll also be discussing topics or things that have been on my mind for a while that I've wanted to write about but never got the chance to. Something like accessibility, or why I am not a fan of frameworks. Hopefully, I'll get more comfortable eventually on the mic, and I'll be able to make this more funny for everyone, so that way it'll be more interesting. The next thing I want to do on this podcast is I want to interview people I find interesting and that are willing to come on the podcast. They won't always be about the website or anything related to the website. They might be have a finance background or something different. Anyone I find interesting, and that I think that they have something of value that anyone listening, my two listeners, will find valuable. So, yeah, I'll be reaching out to some people and trying to get them on the podcast. I read a lot. I read every day. And so, right now, I'm reading Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. And I will be talking about every once in a while the books I read. So I'm reading that one, and I will talk about it in a couple of weeks or episodes. And my next book I'm reading is Evil by Design. I can't remember the author's name, but when I do the episode, I will be sure to have the author's name. And finally, I want to answer any questions anyone has for me related to the podcast directory or any of my past projects, such as the e-commerce store I set up, or alertsforcc.com. God, that is such a terrible name. Why did I decide to choose that name? So either tweet me, or I will set up an email where you can send me emails anonymously, and I will answer them here on the podcast for everyone to hear. All right, everyone. And I think by everyone, I mean my two listeners that I have. I think that's it for now. Tune in next episode to hear more. Thanks.